Yeah, you know, the calls for Blanton to resign took on new weight when the top Republican on Capitol Hill, Speaker Kevin McCarthy, said it was time for Blanton to go. A short while later, the White House informed Scripps News that indeed the president had terminated Blanton. Brett Blanton hung on for months as architect of the Capitol.
Mr. Blanton, how do you respond to the allegations in the Inspector General report?
He never publicly responded to the accusations of unethical behavior detailed in an explosive Inspector General's report released this past fall. It said Blanton and his family used government vehicles intended for home-to-work use only as personal cars, even taking them on vacation and paying for gas with tax dollars. The report included an allegation Blanton posed as a law enforcement officer when he pursued a driver after a hit-and-run incident and then misled investigators about it.
Do you solemnly swear?
At a hearing last week, we also learned Blanton never showed up at the Capitol on January 6th, even though he was in charge of the physical security of the building and sat on the U.S. Capitol Police Board. Lawmakers' frustration with him boiled over.
I am outraged that you would be in a comfortable place, sir, while the rest of us were thinking about dying that day and how we were going to come out alive that day. I'm trying to calm myself down because you bring a lot of anxiety to me, your inability to do your job.
But Congress seemed stuck with Blanton, who had been appointed by President Trump to a 10-year term. Then, when the Speaker of the House weighed in with this tweet, the final decision shifted to the White House, which had already told us it was taking the concerns raised about the architect of the Capitol very seriously. And Blanton did not respond to us today. Last week, though, he said that he has not done anything unethical. Chance.
Patrick, there were things that you laid out there, but I remember last week you and I were talking, and there was this allegation that he said, well, actually, can we put a bench seat in the car? Because the allegation was his daughter's using it. It would be easier for her to drive it around and I guess have friends in it. So we don't know what the truth is, but do we know if Blanton's going to have to pay back the money they say he misused?
Probably not, and we're talking about a little bit over $12,000. So the Inspector General that issued that report, that office really doesn't have the power to claw back money like that. The Inspector General's office did notify a U.S. attorney about all of this a while ago. Of course, U.S. attorney could take some action to try to get the money back, but the U.S. attorney declined to get involved. So this may be the end of it, at least as far as trying to get the money back.
And in another way, a new chapter for the AOC office, which again, in most of America, it's not a familiar name. At the Capitol, this thing is stamped on just about every piece of furniture, everything you can see. It's an influential job. Do they know who's going to be the permanent replacement, like the Capitol, Supreme Court? They have to keep running.
Well, it'll require the President of the United States to appoint someone to be permanent architect of the Capitol. But just to give you a sense of how big this job is, just a few hours after all this happened today, we heard that there is an acting architect of the Capitol, a woman by the name of Sheree Rexroth, who is the chief engineer right now of the Capitol in the architect of the Capitol's office. And though this is not a requirement, unlike Blanton, she actually is a licensed architect.